You're listening to the Sportsman's Nation Podcast Network, brought to you by Outdoor Edge in their complete lineup of knives and game processing kits. These guys right now are doing an absolutely huge giveaway where you could win an elk hunt, and not just any elk hunt. We're talking about a 7 or 8 mile horseback ride into the backcountry. We're talking a one-on-one guided hunt. You're going to be sleeping in a wall tent, and you're going to be doing that for 5 days with the founder and CEO of Outdoor Edge, David Block. Now, if you've never been on an elk hunt before, I'm telling you right now, go sign up for this, because if you ever hear a elk bugle, whether it's at 400 yards or it's at 40 yards, it is a life-changing experience. So here's how you enter. Go to OutdoorEdge.com. There's going to be a big banner for it somewhere on their homepage. All you have to do is click on that, go fill out some information. I think your name, your email address, maybe some other stuff, and that's all you have to do. That's how you are entered. They're going to be picking a winner, a ways from now, so you have plenty of time to enter. Go visit OutdoorEdge.com, sign up today. And if you decide to purchase any products from the website, enter the discount code NATION30. That's the word nation with the number 30 after that, no spaces, NATION30, and you will receive 30% off your purchase.
My name is Clay Newcomb, and I'm the host of the Bear Hunting Magazine podcast. I'll also be your host into the world of hunting the icon of North American wilderness, the bear. We'll talk about tactics, gear, conservation, but we'll also bring you into some of the wildest country on the planet, chasing bear. For those of you that have been paying attention, you've heard us talk about the sheep hunt of the South, which is our way, it's our metaphor, our analogy of talking about hunting black bears in the eastern deciduous forest without the use of bait or hounds, but just hunting them out in the mountains based upon sign. One of the original people that I spoke with about this was James Brandenburg. Well, James, since that time, has been planning a bear hunt here in Arkansas, a sheep hunt of the South bear hunt in Arkansas. And amazingly, well, I don't want to give it away, but James Brandenburg is on this podcast, and he tells the story of an incredible hunt that took place just a few weeks ago right here in Arkansas. From his planning, what happened during the hunt, the execution of the hunt, and he tells the whole story. So you're going to enjoy this podcast with our good buddy, James Brandenburg. This week, I am sighting in a CVA muzzleloader. What I've got is their Acura mountain rifle, and it's got a Cerakote finish, and it's in Max 1 camouflage. It's got a 24.5-inch barrel. It's a breakover gun, so it's kind of like one of these single barrel shotguns. You know, it just breaks over. You know, you release, you press a lever, the bottom of the gun breaks over. It has a breech plug that you can undo by hand. You don't need a tool. And I'm getting a scope in this week, and I'm going to be sighting that gun in and hunting with it next week in Arkansas for deer. Muzzleloader hunting is some of the most liberal and best times to be in the woods for whitetails especially. CVA makes an incredible line of muzzleloaders. This muzzleloader is light and looks sharp. It feels good. You're going to want to check out the CVA line of muzzleloaders and their incredible guarantee that they have on everything that they send out. Check it out at CVA.com. DU Hunting Supply, W Hunting Supply. Our friends, Buddy Woodbury and his team, they've had a big week. Garmin came out with their 200i, which is their first big jump in handheld dog tracking technology in many, many years. So Garmin just released this 200i Alpha, and it's Buddy Woodbury and DU, these are the guys you need to buy these from. If you're looking to upgrade your tracking unit, do it. And just to give a very quick intro to what this is, this thing will track your dogs. You can tone and stimulate your dogs, but it also has built into it an inReach device, which is a satellite text messaging and a satellite emergency service request platform from Garmin. So go check it out. W has some great videos that describe what the 200i is that you can find on social media. Check it out. James Brandenburg, man, you are this really wasn't planned to start out this way, but we've got a treed squirrel dog back here behind the global headquarters. James, you're wearing a shirt. What's your shirt say?
Sheep Hunt of the South.
Sheep Hunt of the South. Can you describe what that means?
Yeah. I feel like I've got a pretty good basis on that now, man. That's down here in the South, we've got we don't have sheep. We got some places to go, some real wild, rugged places to go around and chase black bears.
Yep.
And you want to go out and a big block of national forest or something and spot and stalk a black bear, man.
An elusive animal.
That is. It is very elusive. I have determined, and that is the sheep hunt of the South.
Yeah. So the metaphor was originally developed here at the global headquarters because sheep hunting has this allure, this stigma, this idea around it that it's super difficult, and I'm certain that it is. Sheep are they live in really wild places. They're an elusive animal, and it has this it's been marketed to us as like this elite hunt, sheep shape and all this. Well, we got a little jealous down here, and thought some of our escapades and adventures were being overlooked. So this is, what we termed black bear hunting in national forest without bait or hounds. We called it the sheep hunt of the South because it is extremely difficult. There's no data really on the odds of success, honestly, because so few people have actually dedicated their hunting specifically to bear, which you've done, and that's what we're going to talk about on this podcast.
Yep.
But, most of the bears harvested in the southeastern United States and even in the Appalachians, not over bait or hounds, would be opportunistic deer hunters, because the way things work out west is typically people have specific tags for specific animals.
Right.
So like if you hunt in Montana, like maybe you bought a bear tag, maybe you didn't. If you hunt in Colorado, it's the same way. Like there's these like species specific tags. Most of the Southeast, we have like these sportsman's license.
Yep.
So for $35 in Arkansas, a resident gets 6 deer tags, 2 turkey tags, a bear tag, all the squirrels you want, all the small game you want. And so basically every licensed hunter in Arkansas that has a sportsman's license, which I would guess would be the vast majority of Arkansas hunters,
Yep.
are going to have a bear tag.
That's right.
And so if they're in a bear zone and it's legal and a bear ambles by them while they are intentionally deer hunting and they harvest this bear, wow, God love them. Awesome. We're going to celebrate with you. But that is not what we're talking about.
That's right.
We're talking about a specific and very targeted hunt with an animal that is highly elusive. Bears are very patternable, but they're very hard to find.
Well,
they're
you have to
quirky.
find it first before you can figure out what its pattern is.
Exactly. And so we're going to talk about the challenges of this kind of hunt, and but I just wanted to define what it is.
Yeah.
First of all, so this was your first year bear hunting.
Yeah. I've never done it before.
Tell me why you wanted to get into this.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about, like, you could go back and I think it's episode 44 me and you, we called it the Beginner's Guide to Bear Hunting.
Yep.
And basically it turned into a conversation about how to hunt national forest.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been one of our most listened to podcasts of all time.
Yeah.
People really listen to it.
I probably have a couple of notches. I've listened to that one more than once.
Okay, so you're bumping the analytics on that one.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah. Well, so we have history. Me and you have history in this conversation,
Yep.
which is why it's so stinking cool that you're here and you're going to tell us the story that you're going to tell us.
Yep.
But so tell me what drew you to that kind of hunt.
Yeah. Well, as we've talked about, I'm I don't like the term adult onset hunter, but nobody's come up with a better one. I just didn't start hunting until I was an adult.
Right.
And have just gone through various stages of that. Last year, between hunting multiple species starting September 1st with dove and just going through all the different things, my son and I hitting all these different seasons. And I didn't really see a lot of deer last year, but I was working hard to get out there when I could. And I got to the end of the season, probably the end of deer season is when I started thinking about this, and then went through December and January waterfowl seasons before I really solidified it. But I kind of got to the point where I was asking myself, like, what did I want from hunting? Obviously we want to have success in the field. We want to bring meat home. Some people want to bring home a big trophy deer. They spend a lot of time trying to bring home a trophy. And so I was asking myself, like, why am I doing this? Like, I enjoy it. Like, I look forward to it all the time, but I was going out in these little tiny blocks of time. I'd have an afternoon on a Saturday, and so I'd hustle around and get everything done on Saturday morning, and I could go out in the afternoon on Saturday. Or I'd get up super early and go out for a day. Or I remember one weekend, I drove to Tulsa to watch my son play soccer. Then I drove back, and my intention was to hunt. I was going to deer hunt Sunday all day. And my youngest son had gone with my oldest son and youth waterfowl hunted in Missouri. And it was fantastic, Dad. You got to take me back. You got to take me back. We got to go back. It was so good. So I got up at like 3:30 in the morning and I took him up to go duck hunt. And then I came home and then I went out and deer hunted. I mean, I was killing myself. Long story short, I was killing myself. What am I trying to get out of this? And I realized what I haven't had that I think a lot of people who grew up hunting have had is I hadn't had a hunting camp experience. And I hadn't really dedicated an extended period of time to a particular hunt where I'm going to go, I'm going to scout, I'm going to hunt. If I need to keep hunting until I'm successful, or I'm going to give myself an extended block of time to hunt day in, day out, and take what I'm learning in the moment and apply that to the next day's hunt. And so something else that you had said, at some point in the Gary Newcomb School of Hunting was, be good hunting where you live first. You don't need to travel. I mean, coronavirus happened, but my decisions were made before coronavirus, so I wasn't going to travel this year. But I just said, let me give this a try.
Yeah.
And block out the time.
I think I want to stop you before you answer your question because I thought it was a great question to ask. I mean, that has me thinking about your question, asking myself the question. Which I think if you don't do it very intentionally, you kind of skip over it. But it's like, I like that question. What do you want to get out of hunting?
Yeah.
Because sometimes for people that hunt a lot and have done it a long time, sometimes you forget why you're doing what you're doing just because it's just what you do.
Right.
And not that doesn't take away the enjoyment of it. But I think that's a good place to be self-aware, to be analytical. And it was like, what's your goal? Like, why are you doing what you're doing, and are you getting out of it what you need to be getting out of it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just a point to slow down and think about.
Yeah, and that's my approach to a lot of things in life. Some people don't have that, and that's fine. Like, not everybody needs to be self-critical the way that I probably am about myself, but it's just my nature. Like, I'm gonna ask myself, do I need to be spending time doing that? Is spending time on Facebook like what I need to be doing to sharpen my saw, so to speak, and just to be the kind of person I want to be? I think
it's okay to say that everybody needs to be doing that.
I mean,
there's some people that have a natural default systems built inside of them for self-reflection and awareness that's maybe stronger than someone else. But I'd say that is a skill of being human that has made us successful as a species and as people, and is something that needs to be sharpened inside of all of us.
Yeah.
Now, you can do it too much so that you're over-analytical and super critical of yourself and stuff like that, which some people might tend to be that way. But then there's other groups of people that just have no self-awareness, no self-evaluation, and I would say that's not good either.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? I like what you're saying. So I don't think it's just like, well, I'm that way, and maybe some people aren't. I think you've spotted a reality that, yes, you are that way, and there are some people that are not. And it's their choice, but it's good to be aware, analytical, self-reflective, critical to a degree. I mean, if you want to be successful in anything, you got to do that.
I think so.
I like what you're saying.
Yeah. So in thinking about all that, what do I want to get out of my hunt this year, or out of my time in the field? I really wanted to have that time. What I explained to you earlier, and I think most hunters would understand this. When you walk into the woods, you kind of walk in with a bubble around you. And that you push that bubble out into the woods, and the game, the birds and the squirrels and whatever's around you, unless you're, the faster you move, the bigger the bubble is around you. Let me put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get out into the woods and you see, like, you sit down and you sit still, and then you see the woods come back in, you can see that bubble shrink around you when the birds start to get closer to you, the squirrels start to get active around you. And that's the best way that I can describe what I wanted to have in a total hunting experience this year, rather than having I got to rush out for a weekend here, rush out for a weekend there, or a day or whatever.
Yeah.
I wanted to go out into the woods, plant my flag, and then have the woods kind of shrink back in around me, and then exist where the other parts of life that are all important, and they have to be balanced in order for you to do this, but those parts of life I could very purposely set aside and ignore, and just be immersed in the hunt. Now, whether I was successful or not, this year for me, my definition of success was, I'm going to the woods. As long as I don't, injure myself badly, run, have to run out of the woods because I, terrify myself or something like that. Like, if I can go out there and sit there and do that and kind of be happy being with myself, that was success. That was how I defined it this year. I want to go in the woods. I want to learn more about the environment around me. So I spent the year, Clay, I spent all summer, last spring into the summer, kind of practicing those skills, like go out in the woods, camp for a night in the woods, go look around, ask myself, what is that tree? What is that plant? What uses that? Where are the trails? How do I get around? What happens to me when I put on 20 pounds of weight in my pack and carry it around? I did all of that stuff. And but with the intention that when I got to the end of September, I was going to know what I was getting myself into.
Yeah, man, I really like I like the way that you described the bubble, because the bubble you're talking about is actually real. I mean, like when you walk into the woods, like that's a great description, but it's also internal. And then, you kind of used it as a analogy for even your space as a human. For somebody that there is a lot of value inside of a hunt that is a longer period of time, where you can go and get away from, and not to escape. I don't like an escapism mentality. Like people act like their world is just on fire. And then when they get out in the woods, it's like, oh, I can just get a reprieve from the world. Like,
it's going to be waiting for you when you come back.
So I like this holistic idea that that we could build our lives in such a way, and this is what I've seen you do, that we can plan and we can go to a wild place and immerse ourselves in it, and our world not fall apart at home. And that gives you the ability to actually be successful when you hunt. Is that, but it's a pretty, we actually talked about this a few podcasts ago when we were in Montana. It's a pretty rare human experience these days to be in a wild place for like 7 days.
Right.
Even though that's not to say that there aren't other people other than hunters using wild places for extended periods of time. But hunters are doing that probably more than anybody. I can't think of, some of these guys would be like mountaineering and going backcountry camping for like 10 days at a time. That's a pretty elite group of people.
It is.
Most people that are just campers, recreational campers, are going out for 2-3 days max. Do you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I think so. It's hard to. Maybe it's just because they're not taking pictures and putting them on Instagram that maybe I'm not following the right Instagram accounts. I don't know, but it seems like you're right.
Well, and I'm not saying that there's not people that don't, but what I am saying is that when you're hunting, you have a reason to be in the woods for 7 days.
Yeah.
10 days. And it's...
and that to me, like, that's another part of it too. Like, I enjoy being out in the woods, but I really enjoy having a reason to be out in the woods.
Absolutely. I have no qualms with saying that I am not a hiker. You like say, hey, Clay, let's go on a 7-day backpacking trip in Colorado in June. And I'm like, man, I think I'll stay here.
Yeah.
And granted, maybe there would be a time when I would do that and love it. But when you become a hunter and you it's like a lot of your mental space and recreational space in the outdoors just becomes focused on a goal, which you spent a lot of time in the woods during the summer scouting, but it was mission oriented. It was driven towards this thing that's coming.
You know what Ben said on that podcast is sharpening the life knife.
Yeah.
That's the term that he used. And I really liked that. And that was, that's what I felt like I was doing every time I went out scouting. It was a hike and it was 90, 95 degrees sometimes.
Yep.
But I was sharpening that knife and figuring out I was learning the landscape. I was learning a different skill. I was understanding how I was going to be able to perform physically in that environment. So, like if I can't, I feel like at this point in my hunting career, if I can't be outside and adding something to my capability or testing something, like it just drives my wife nuts, because she'll be like, on Mother's Day, like we always go for Mother's Day hike. And in my mind, it's an opportunity to test something out, some new piece of gear or some skill, so I'll build a little fire, or I'm trekking poles, whatever it is, drives her nuts, but that's what I got to do. So
mission oriented.
That's right. Right.
Yeah. Well, so what did bring me along on the so you've set aside this time to to go on a big hunt.
Yep. Yeah. So I set the goal. I was going to go out and, I wanted to bring some buddies along with me. So I have one guy who I hunt with, my buddy Darren from Texas, and we usually hunt together once a year. We've done different things. And then I've wanted to get another buddy, Rick, to go along with us and experience some of these same adventures, because he's very similar mindset. Like, he really enjoys the experience of being outside. And just for various reasons, he's not been able to join us. But I thought this might be something that I could talk him into. So I started early. I got those guys involved, and they were cool with that. They're like, okay, yeah, we'll do that. We thought maybe we'll backpack in somewhere and set it up. Ultimately decided I took my camper down and set that up.
Yeah.
Just trying to reduce some of those kind of hurdles. And then it was really about figuring out, where did I want to go, and then learning that area. So I had to pick a spot. I mean, we've talked about this before. Like, okay, I've got 1.8 million acres. Which 50 or 100 or 500 or whatever am I going to pick? So I just had to pick something and then get more detailed.
You talking about acres makes me think of something that's interesting. So one of the places that I spend quite a bit of time hunting in national forest, like, I often evaluate the size of it based upon like how far I travel inside of that, and so like I might turn on my Onyx, tracker.
Yep.
And, on an average jaunt up in there, if I'm moving quite a bit, maybe not just going to one place, but maybe I'm scouting and hunting, I might go 4 miles or something in a day. Like, that's pretty common. So one day I was like, I wonder how big the area is that I hunt, because, we all, if you go to a place over and over, you kind of begin to learn the boundaries of kind of just where you go. I go to that ridge that way. I go as far as over there. I go as far as over there to the east. And then I start back at the truck, down in the south. I did the feature on Onyx.
A little box?
Where you can box it in. It was 400 acres. Blew my mind.
Yeah. Thought it would be bigger than that?
Well, because the furthest point that I go one direction and the furthest point that I go the other direction was like 2.5 miles. But the little square was narrow. So it had a real long edge, but then it had a narrow, and it was just the layout of this particular area.
Yeah.
And you could, and I was just like, holy cow. I would have thought I was hunting 2,500 acres.
Yeah.
I was hunting like 400 and change.
Well, and think about that from the standpoint of the density of the animal that you're pursuing on the landscape. Like, how lucky is it that you find an animal in that small amount of space?
Exactly. Yeah, especially with these bears, man. And we could nerd out about densities, which that's part of what makes the sheep hunt of the South so intriguing, is that the animal densities in the Ozarks, in the western Arkansas mountains that we're hunting, are less than a bear per square mile. So, if you think about that in terms of acres, square mile would be 640 acres, essentially.
Yep.
And so at any given time, there is a better chance that there's not a bear in the square mile that you're standing in than there is, because it's like it ends up being a little bit.
Well, there's places where they're just more dense, and there's places where they're
absolutely
less dense.
There's place, and that's what it boils down to, is that the spatial data that they use to gather bear densities and kind of understand like how bears spread across the landscape is just a way for us to try to get some descriptor, but it's not accurate really at all.
No,
because we've all seen pictures of multiple bears in the same frame. I mean, even if it's not overbayed or something, like I've got pictures of multiple bears in the same frame, just out in the mountains, just for whatever reason they were there together. And it's like, well, this is a statistical anomaly. But these bears have these massive ranges. And I'll tell you what I've learned from talking with Laura Conley up in Missouri, Sarah Lida over in Oklahoma, and Myron Means here in Arkansas, is that some of these males have incredibly large home ranges and females as well. I mean, Sarah Lida was telling me about one that was crossing over into Arkansas and Oklahoma that was traveling, I want to say 30 miles. But for a female, I would have told you before, nah, they don't travel that far. The males do. But these males, I mean, they're traveling up in Missouri, they're traveling 175 miles in a single direction. And so
it's crazy to think, I mean, and that's what makes it so hard to do this hunt. You might have a picture of a bear that was on a walkabout. He may have just been coming through and going from, somewhere down by the Arkansas River. He may be going up to, he's probably not going to Missouri. That's a pretty long walk, but
very well could have though.
But that's just what makes it that much harder. Like, I mean, as I sit here and think about it, I go back and forth on it. I haven't ever done a sheep hunt. I probably won't ever do a sheep hunt. I think, you can sit in one place and you do a lot of glassing looking for sheep. And then it's a physical test.
Right.
I think.
Yep.
You've got to get from here to the top of that mountain or the top of the next mountain or whatever it is. Well, here it's a mental test and a physical. I mean, they both have all of this stuff. So I don't want to denigrate, sheep hunters, but point being,
I'm okay with it.
The mental part of it here is you can't see. I used my binoculars, but it's for me to be able to see through the trees.
Yeah.
To see 100 yards,
if you could see 100 yards in the places that I hunt, that would be like a broad vista.
Oh, yeah.
I would feel like Daniel Boone, like coming over the Cumberland Gap, like looking across Kentucky, if I could see 100 yards.
Yeah, no. And the only reason,
that's a mental challenge.
That's the mental challenge. And then, the physical side of it is still you've got to get out there, whatever the weather throws at you, whatever the hills throw at you, whatever, and get it done.
Man, hey, I've hunted a lot of places in North America, and these mountains they're not as big. I mean, the highest elevations we have here in a 3,000 foot range. And to that, some people would go, small mountains. Because, out in different places, you're hunting mountains much bigger.
Yep.
But what people don't realize is that so the actual relief that we're dealing with these mountains, which would be the actual amount that you're climbing, it might be in the 1,000 to 1,500 foot range. Like that's what you'd be climbing. So you would start at like 1,500 feet above sea level and then go to, above 2,000 or something, whatever. Yep. That's not my point. My point is these hills are rugged and filled with obstruction.
The obstruction is the hard part.
And obstruction could be a log. I've heard it said that when you're walking and you actually have to pick your foot up to step over a branch or a log, you're exerting like twice the amount of caloric energy to that step as if you were just walking on unimpeded ground. We just spent a bunch of time out in Washington, and man, hiking down a trail going back into where you're hunting is way easier, even if it's pretty far, even if it's going uphill. It's not apples to apples, what I'm saying. You can't just say, those little hills down there aren't that hard. Come down here and walk in them and you'll see. And I just spent a week in the Missouri Breaks, and now the Missouri Breaks are all in themselves kind of the same story because they're not high elevation. And so you think, I don't need to be in that great shape. It's not big mountains. Man, it's just a rock pile, so it's... Yeah,
I think anytime that you have to clear those hurdles, it's not just like walking on a path. That's going to... And there's a lot of hunting that's like that for sure. There's not just a path to every great hunting spot.
Yeah.
But when you throw that into the mix of what you're doing, you are... Any hunter that that chooses to hunt that way should be commended for the extra effort that has to be expended to do that, because it adds a big dimension to it that has to be overcome. I mean, so that is a mental and physical part of it, because you have to break some of those barriers. You have to physically choose, I'm going to go through that rock garden, that briar patch, that, those blowdowns, whatever it is, and you go do it. You don't even think about that while you're doing it. And that's another thing that I wanted to get out of it, was just to challenge myself physically. And what I learned in that, Clay, is that I can do that stuff. I was talking to Jonathan about this, our good friend, Jonathan Wilkins. And I was talking to him about this last year in January, and he's like, man, we can do so much more as humans than what we give ourselves credit for. Mm-hmm. And through hunting, I have learned that, and I figured that out. Again, I had that reinforced for me on this hunt, where, man, I need to go over there, so I went over there. It's just like, okay, just get there.
And there's no substitution for that, like for that in the field combination of physical aptitude, but also mental grit. I was following Devin Jewell up in British Columbia, who is probably 10 years younger than me, super shape, got legs like a gazelle. And I was following him through the mountains. This is a few years ago. And Devin's a good friend of mine. It was one of our first times hunting together. I felt like he was trying to lose me. And I just set in my mind that he wasn't going to lose me, And I just stayed right on his tail as we were going up this hill trying to get to this glassing spot. And when we got done, it was to the point that I just laughed when we stopped. And I said, that was fun. And I said, what do you find with your clients? Like, because I don't think a lot of your clients probably would have done what we just did the way we just did it. And he said, it's all about attitude. He said, you might get a chubby 50-year-old guy in here that just pounds the mountain because he's got the desire. And, obviously you have to have some foundation of physical fitness. You're not just going to go from couch to that. But he said most of it, he felt like, was not actually physical, but was mental. Mm-hmm. And he said he's seen these like ripped guys just be really mentally weak. And I'm not taking anything away from people that focus on physical fitness, like, because we know that there's some incredible guys that just do some incredible stuff. But at the same time, it's not everything. But the combination of mental and physical can be a really powerful combination.
Yeah. And so I wanted to test myself in that way. That's another thing I wanted to get out of the hunt was, and I had done some of that last year, hike back in somewhere, walk in waterfowling area, things like that. And those things are physically taxing as well. I wanted to bundle that all together into one cohesive, comprehensive hunt that I would go out there, I would hit it hard for multiple days, and my success was entirely wrapped up in completing the experience, not punching my tag, but just completing the experience.
Yeah.
And bringing home meat was going to be the bonus if I got to do it.
So we started this by talking about where, like you said, you were talking about your stages of planning, and you were like, I had to pick a spot. I don't want you to tell it where you were, obviously, but like, how'd you do that?
Well,
and while you're at it, don't give them any tips that's going to help them.
Right? Yeah, because
we've shared too much already. You know what? This podcast is done, guys. Go to Georgia. Go to East Tennessee. Don't ever come here to bear hunt. It's terrible. No, go ahead. Actually, I'm serious. Georgia's way better than Arkansas.
Well, they get two tags.
2 bear tags, and I guarantee you they got more bear than we have.
Well, here's a fun little fact for you. So I had been talking with some of the guys that I used to be on the Southeast chapter board with, and one of them is like, I've been hunting for 10 years, and I've only ever killed 1 bear. I don't know how you went out there and did it in 1 year. I'm like, I don't know how I did it either. And he hunts in Georgia. So
really?
Yeah.
Well.
So how did I
just like what
I was looking for, Clay, is because I knew that what I was going to fight was because we can bait on private land in Arkansas.
Right.
And so I wanted to try to find as big a block of public land as I could find that still had good access for me to be able to get into. Like, I knew I wasn't going to be able to hike 10 miles in with everything I needed on my back. I don't have that skill set. So I needed roads and I needed some of that. So I've just looked at different places. We have several federally designated wilderness areas here in Arkansas. You can pull out any map and look at any one of them and kind of see the same kind of thing of what I'm talking about. I just wanted to find someplace like that where I could get away from.
There's also a lot of
land.
walk-in hunting areas that are essentially like wilderness in Arkansas.
Yeah.
That have no roads, but they don't have that specific designation.
Mm-hmm.
So for people looking like that, it's not just those wildernesses. There's big chunks of national forest, specifically some of these walk-in areas. But go ahead.
Yeah. So that answers the question. Like, that's how I picked where I went.
What about the county? Were you looking at harvest numbers or anything?
I checked that. And yeah, I mean, it probably played a little bit of a role, but anywhere that would fit the first requirement was going to be fine for me as far as harvest numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's just the way it works.
What about how far from where you lived? Were you interested in that?
Didn't bother me too much.
So you were willing to drive?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's 2.5 hours from where I lived to get there. So, a scouting trip was a day.
Yep.
That was a day that I was going to spend gone from home.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the biggest question that like people have on a traveling hunt is where to start. And I know with me elk hunting in Colorado and many of the other traveling hunts I've done, it's just like where to start.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you just got to go. I mean, you just gotta pick a spot with the best data that you have and just go try to learn it.
Well, and I think having the time and the ability to go scout, whatever that's going to look like for you, that certainly helped. Like, I didn't make my final decision on where I was going to go until I went over there probably sometime in May, I think, and drove around, knowing by that time that I wanted to bring the camper.
Right.
And so I wanted to find a place where I could put the camper. So I had to be able to at least pull a camper into it. There's some places that I scouted out that would have been pretty sketchy for me. It was tough to get to with just a truck. So I knew I wouldn't be able to get in there with a camper. So I did one loop, found several places so that if I got over there and that spot was taken, I could go somewhere else. And then once I had settled on that, then I just spent the summer map scouting, coming up with places I wanted to go look at. Then I'd go over for a day and look at it and do that.
So tell me about like what you found in your scouting, or maybe jump right into the couple of days. You got over there a couple of days before season.
Yeah.
And let's talk about like this year, like what did you find?
Okay. My early scouting that I did over the summer and leading up to it was just about understanding the terrain.
Okay.
When I look at this map, what does this mean? Like,
yeah. Okay.
Getting it, you can look at a map, but if you don't really comprehend the scale, you don't know, okay, 1,000 feet from that creek to the top of that mountain, what does that look like? How hard is that going to be? What does that trail look like? And so I did couple different hikes. I just went over there and hiked 4 or 5 miles and see what it was like. Then I was looking for just basic terrain features. I looked for water. I looked for oak flats. In the summertime, I was just trying to look and see what kind of trees were there, stuff like that. I was pretty satisfied with what I found on my scouting trips.
A lot of people ask if they see a bear in a certain place or getting pictures of a bear, will it be there during bear season? I get that pretty often. Mm-hmm. Somebody will send me a picture in July and they'll go, hey, I got this bear over here. Do you think he'll be here in October? And I always say, probably not. but that doesn't mean that another bear's not going to be there.
Right.
That specific bear, I mean, I'd be surprised if you ever see it again. But you're in a bear area, which is good, and it's all about food source. You know, they have these huge home ranges, and they utilize different parts of that home range at different times of the year. So it's not a bad sign to find bear sign during the summer.
Yep.
But it's not necessarily going to be highly relevant.
Right.
Come the end of September when season starts.
Yep.
It's good intel, but it's not super relevant.
Well, and that's what I was kind of, I was hoping to find sign at least,
Just so you know there were bear there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Make sure I wasn't going someplace where there weren't. So, so my goal with the trip was to go set everything up a few days before the season opened. I spent the Thursday all day, and then the Friday morning. And we did some scouting on Friday afternoon too, but walked in different areas, just went for a walk, just to look and see, can I find the hot sign? Do I find the white oaks dropping up high versus down low? What do the water holes look like? I ended up finding hogs where I hadn't seen any hogs before. So, I had to process that. Like, that's going to have some impact on what's using the water hole. I was looking for bear tracks. I was looking for bear scat. Some places I hadn't been before. So I was even looking for access. Just, I want to get over to that certain place over there. Can I actually even physically get to it? How rugged is it? So that's what my scouting involved on Thursday and Friday. Yeah. And I found some deer sign.
You didn't want to kill those hogs?
Yes, I did want to kill those hogs, but it is illegal in Arkansas to kill hogs on public land before November 1st.
Wait a minute. Are you serious?
Yeah, I double checked on it.
See, I thought it was just on WMAs where they were managing for that.
My understanding, reading the regulations, was you're not allowed to hunt specifically for hogs on public land in Arkansas.
Right.
You can incidentally take them with the method of take that's legal for the season you're in. So if it's archery season, you can shoot them with a bow, etc.
Right.
But that doesn't start till November 1st.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Okay. See, because when you told me, you texted me and you said, found hogs, and I said, shoot them.
I was going to. Man, I had my pistol out, and I was a little bit too far away for a pistol shot, and this was before, I wasn't carrying my bow because bow season wasn't open yet.
Yeah.
But I had my pistol with me just in case, and I didn't get a shot, which probably is a good thing.
It's good.
Yeah.
See, it would have been if you would have said that, I would have checked the regulations, which I haven't. Almost every place I hunt doesn't have hogs right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I just hadn't paid that much attention. But I did know that on the wildlife management areas, you could not shoot hogs.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that applied to national forests.
What they say is just public land.
Okay. When
well,
that's great intel. Good news. Okay,
So I scouted Thursday and Friday. My buddy Rick got in town. Darren ended up not being able to come. His dog got sick and had to have surgery.
Come on, Darren.
I know it was
your dog got sick, Darren. Come on, man.
Well,
you're a hunter-gatherer. I don't even know Darren. I'm sure Darren's listening to this. Darren.
Yeah, no,
good dog ownership.
Yeah, it was good that he stayed.
Bear hunting.
Yeah, this year he missed out. But Rick got there, and so
good job,
took
Rick.
him around and showed him a few things and made a plan. And woke up. We made a plan. I hadn't really seen anybody. I had seen people in the area, but aside from a little bit of flagging tape here and there, I didn't have any indication of how many people we'd have hunting in our area.
Right.
Well, 5:15, and we're parked. Our camper's right off the road. 5:15 in the opening morning, guy rolls up in a truck. It's kind of slow rolls past our campsite, goes down the road a little ways and parks. Oh man, somebody else is going to be in here.
You can see his lights parking.
Oh yeah. We go out from camp and his truck was right there.
Okay.
So, And who knows, he may listen to the podcast, and he ended up talking to Rick later on. And yeah, he was hunting exactly the same place I was hunting on Saturday.
Probably deer hunting, probably.
He was deer hunting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of the people that were over there were deer hunting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he had no idea I was there. The only indication that I had he was there is I found a half a boot print somewhere on the trail on my way in. I was real slow getting in there. But we decided, so here's something that we decided that it wasn't worth it to us to get up early to try to get somewhere because we couldn't see.
Yeah.
And we didn't probably know the area well enough to go bumbling around in the dark. Figured we might as well still hunt our way in, set up, and sit and watch. So he went in. That guy was there at 5:15. We didn't go out, and it was super foggy that morning. We didn't go out till it might have been 7 o'clock.
Yeah,
6:30, 6:45 at the earliest.
Yeah.
Hunted all day Saturday. I hiked in different places that I hadn't been before. Saw some cool stuff that I hadn't seen. Spooked some deer. I actually found some torn up logs that day. In retrospect, I think I put myself in a pretty good spot. But it was in the middle of the day. And by early afternoon, I hadn't taken enough food with me to stay out all day. So I just hiked out of there. And I just wrecked myself hiking out. Like, I picked a way to go that climbing through all the obstacles. I mean, I had a little, not a bluff. It wasn't a cliff. It was a small bluff line I had to navigate. I got into a briar patch that I couldn't hardly get through.
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably still have the scabs from it, but
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't go back out Saturday. I got back probably 2:30 or so Saturday afternoon. I didn't go back out Saturday night. Sunday, I get up. Rick had seen a nice buck that morning on Saturday morning. Couldn't get a shot at it, so we were like, well, maybe we'll be incidental deer hunters. So we went back in kind of the same area, and the plan was that we were going to hunt just a few hundred yards apart. I could never find a place where I wanted to sit and hunt, so I just kept going farther and farther and farther and farther. And I made another 2.5 or 3 mile.
Story of my life.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up hiking another probably 2.5 or 3 miles. Made a big loop, got back in the afternoon. I was wrecked again. It was hot too. That was the other thing. It was pretty warm. Had some lunch, drank some water, got myself charged up. Made a plan for Sunday night. Went out and thought I was going to make just a really small loop Sunday night. Got into it. I felt like I was hanging on by my toenails on the side of a hill that couldn't hardly navigate. But I found bear scat Sunday night. First scat that I had found.
Bear scat. Check.
Yep. So that was one of my measures of success.
Yeah.
I had told several people, if I see bear scat, I'm successful.
Yeah.
So I checked that box. It was old, but I was glad to see it. But got back on Sunday night, and both Rick and I were like, these 2 days are not working. Like, what we've been doing is not working. Just hiking up and down, changing elevation. So made a plan for Monday. My plan was take more food, stay out all day, do more sitting and less hiking. And so, and Rick decided to go into a different spot that we had scouted. I'd put a camera up on Thursday and we checked it on Friday, had a deer, had walked through there, had seen some scrapes and stuff. He was going to go hunt that, see if he could get a deer. So Monday morning, we go different directions. And I get to the trailhead, get started walking in, and I walked in probably half, 3/4 of a mile, and I get to this drainage. And there's a quasi trail in there, so people have been back in there. And I kind of walk up this little dry creek bed a little bit, and I get to looking around, and I'm like, man, it really looks like something has been around here, like living here. It's just...
What did you see that made you think that?
First thing was just, when you're in the woods or whatever, and the leaves are fluffy, there's like they've just fallen.
You're right.
But then when there's been a lot of activity, like the leaves are smashed or they're pushed away, you see clear spots in the ground.
Yeah.
There's just some places where it looked like something had been coming and going a whole bunch.
Just activity
in
the leaves is what you're saying.
And then I started kind of looking around, and I saw a bunch of torn up logs. And so they looked, they looked like newer activity in that regard. Some logs are just blown apart, and it's like, man, no big deal. But I had seen so many torn up logs in all the hiking around that I had done. I had started to be able to look at it and say, okay, that's newer, that's older.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So I kind of filed that spot away. I kept on. I had some goals for the day of where I wanted to get to. I did a couple different sits through the day, and ultimately I got myself on this little point, and I was sitting there. I found another little pile of bear scat out there.
Older though.
It was older.
It's dried.
Yep. And ultimately, I realized about 4:00 in the afternoon that I had set myself up under a widowmaker.
Okay, under a big tree that was going to fall.
Had a bunch of dead limbs up in the top of it.
Okay,
and something I struggled with that was really the whole time that bothered me was wind is supposed to be out of this direction, but man, down in these hollers and everything, it was just going every which way. It's supposed to be generally prevailing out of the north that day, and it was constantly coming at me from the southwest. And so the wind is blowing, and I hear the branches knocking together. I'm like, this is not the place I'm going to make my last stand. Like, I'm just going to go somewhere else. So,
hey, that's the story of hunting these any kind of small cut up terrain features, whether you're in the Missouri Breaks or in the Ozarks. Cut up terrain is just highly unpredictable, especially when you're off the side of the mountain. Sometimes on top of the mountains, because the wind is not obstructed, it's going to be fairly congruent with what you would look on a weather forecast and see. Sides of mountains, hollows, are just going to be chaos.
Yep. Yeah, and that's exactly what I was finding. I was hunting around 1,400 feet elevation, and the mountaintops to the north of me were 2,000 feet. So, man, the wind was just coming over the top, and then it was just rolling and swirling and coming down and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So I had seen a pretty good rub line. I had scouted in that area on Friday. I had seen a pretty good rub line, and it was pretty close to that activity area that I had seen. And so I decided I'm going to go back over to that spot. I'm going to sit kind of back up away from that where I can watch the trail. I can watch this little drainage area, and just that's where I'm going to finish the day. Probably going to finish the hunt there because I had to come back for a meeting. So I was like, well, and Rick had to leave, so thought I'd at least come back and resupply. And maybe if I had to, I'd go back and on the weekend.
What did Rick have that was so important?
Family. Rick had family obligations.
Rick. Okay.
Rick lives his life in balance, Clay.
Good. Has he been listening to our podcast?
I think so.
Rick, you should have stayed. No, good job, Rick.
Yeah, no, he's going to get his kudos later on here. So I figured, I'm just going to go back and sit there. So I go back, and you and I were trading messages a little bit. And I think I told you at that point, I figured I had hiked about 14 miles over the 5 days, I guess. And so I get in there, I sit down, I'm sitting on a log. I think the way to envision this mentally for people is and I think I told you this, like if you put your left hand out in front of you and you make the sign for 4.
Okay.
Every one of your fingers is a ridge line
doing it now.
running downhill towards your hand. Your fingertips are high up on the mountain, and your hand is low towards the creek drainage.
Gotcha.
And then each one of those spots in between your fingers is a hollow that where the water's coming down when it rains and whatever. There's a trail that runs across the knuckles at the base of your hand. Okay, and that's the trail that I came in on.
Okay.
And I was sitting essentially at pretty close to that knuckle on your pinky finger, and I was watching the drainage that runs between your pinky finger and your ring finger.
Got it.
And I'm watching the trail that runs across your knuckles.
Got it.
So off to my right on the trail is where the rub line is, and off to the left up the drainage is where this
mysterious disturbance was.
Mysterious, yes. 6:30, I'm looking out and I can see the hillside across from me, and the sun and shadow. The shadow's just creeping up the mountain, but it's getting pretty still, like it does around dusk. And I'm like, okay, I can make it 30 more minutes. That's when sunset was. I was only about a half a mile, maybe a little bit more than a half mile from the truck. The trail was a quasi trail, so it's real easy to get turned around. And I wanted to get out before it was totally dark. I'll make it till 7 o'clock, and then I'm going out. Put my phone back in my pocket and do that slow head turn to the right, slow head turn to the left, just in case anything snuck up on me while I was looking at my phone. When I turn my head to the left, I see this black fur. I'm like, oh, that's a bear. So I got my bow in my left hand. I clip my release on, and as it's coming up, it goes behind a pine tree. And when it goes behind that pine tree, I come to full draw.
This just happens, just like bam.
How
close is the bear?
At that point, I don't know how close it is. I think it's pretty far away.
I mean, you tell me. I mean, was it like 40 yards away or like?
No, it was like 10 yards away.
Oh, that's very close.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
With you.
So we so I come to full draw, and when that bear comes around that pine tree, its face fills my sight picture.
Like looking through your peep sight.
Through my peep.
Oh, this sucker's close.
Yeah.
Wow.
And of course I'm thinking, okay, well, I can't shoot it in the face. I had,
Quit looking at the horns, James.
Yeah. So it sees me and stops. And then it goes,
and kind of huffed at you.
Kind of huffed, yeah.
Yeah.
And it jumps up on the base of that pine tree. And it's just sitting there looking at me.
And that would be a pretty typical response of a spooked bear. Like he's trying to make a decision. Should I run up this tree to get away from this thing? Like a lot of times when a bear is spooked, it'll put its front paws up on a tree.
Yeah.
Because they can climb a tree like a squirrel.
Oh, man. And it was just like, on the ground, and then it was on the tree. It was like,
just like, bam.
Boom.
Did it totally latch onto the tree, or were its back feet on the ground?
No, it was totally on the tree.
So it just like, jumped up on the
tree. Like Spider-Man.
Oh, man. You're at full draw looking at it through your peep sight.
I'm at full draw looking at it through my peep sight. And I've been practicing for this, trying to get that automatic, because archery is not my thing either. I mean, I've been working at it all summer long. I push that bow away and I pull back, get that back tension, that top pin right in the middle of the middle, and I let the arrow fly.
So you're looking at like this broadside bear, but it's vertical. The Bear Hunting Magazine podcast never trained you for that.
It didn't, and I felt let down in the moment. It was through my head. I went, doggone it, Clay.
We're gonna have a whole episode on shooting bears on the sides of trees. You did good though. You aimed for the sort of the middle,
and then of course now at this point the bears later figure out it's 6 yards.
Oh man, he's right in your lap.
He was. I mean, he wanted to get in my lap. I feel like that's where he was going, because he was coming around. He was going right down that tree, that log that I was sitting on. He would have come right down the uphill side of that log.
Wow.
So arrow flies, it hits him. He runs off
Did
with
it pass
the arrow.
through? Okay.
No, he runs off with the arrow in him.
You see,
and I hear it hit.
Smack.
Yep.
Wow.
Looking back, it hit him. Spoiler alert, we get the bear. But hit him in the shoulder, right? Not in the shoulder, just behind the shoulder, basically in the armpit. I got one lung, and then there was a small hole right at the sternum. So it came kind of. So either the bear was kind of turned towards me.
So the entry point was right behind the left front shoulder.
Right front shoulder.
Right front shoulder, and then the arrow came out in the chest. So it actually hit. It didn't pass through a lot of the bear.
Right. It probably hit the tree. Would be my guess, that kept it from going through, because he was sucked on the side of that tree. So it probably hit the tree, but I did come to find out I got one lung. So if I had hit much farther, what we would typically say farther back, in this case with him vertical, farther down, I don't know if we would have gotten that bear.
Because you might not have got the vitals.
Yeah.
So he runs off, and then you kind of see him start to slow down out there.
Yeah. He runs off, and I do, I'm sitting there. I go through everything, try to make sure I know where I am. Where does he go? You have no idea. Like, in the moment, I know my memory could be really bad. Yep. So I try to pause and get my wits about me. And then I go and I check, and this was pretty quick after. I go and I check, like, what kind of blood do I have? I find blood. I start to follow it very tentatively. I find pretty healthy amounts of blood, so I'm happy about that. Then I find my arrow. I've probably gone 20 or 30 yards. I find my arrow. About the time I find my arrow, I figure out how much penetration did I get. Then I see the bear up ahead of me, probably another 40 or 50 yards. I'm not quite sure on this point. I get the binos out. I'm watching him. I see him try to go up the hill. He kind of falls backwards and then kind of works his way down the hill. So I think, okay, this bear's hit pretty good. I want to just sit here and watch, and I watch. I would
take that as a really good sign.
I did. I was very, very confident.
Yeah.
I just sat there and watched. I was like, I'm not going to go any closer. I'm just going to watch. But it seemed like he was not. Just laying down and staying put. Right. So this had me a little bit concerned.
And this is how long after the shot?
10 minutes.
Okay, so if you shoot an animal and he's still alive 10 minutes later on his feet, that is a sign that everything isn't as it should be.
Right.
It's not necessarily a terrible sign. The good sign is that he hadn't run out of the country and that you saw him.
Right.
I mean, when you shoot an animal, if you can keep eyes on it, which rarely you can, I mean, an animal that is just non-mortally wounded is going to be a long ways away after 10 minutes.
Yep.
So the fact that he hadn't gone very far, he was showing signs of struggle, that's a positive thing. It would be a red flag that he was still alive.
Yep.
I mean, like a double lung hit animal will usually live, for sure less than a minute. And they can even be dead quicker than that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just kind of some points to think about.
And that's what I was going through in my head was watch him as long as I can, but also recognize that I still need to get out of there. If I'm going to leave him, I've got to get out of there without spooking him too much.
Did you ever think about trying to get another arrow?
I did.
In him?
I thought about it, but there was no way.
Okay.
Like he was
just thick.
It was thick. It was far. It was too far away for me to take an ethical shot. I could have thrown an arrow at him, but
let me stop you there. In my mind, there's no unethical shot after
the follow. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Really, if you could have seen the bear's hindquarters, and you could have put an arrow straighten a hindquarter, that's ethical because you've already initiated anything.
Yeah.
It's going to slow him down. So anyway, that's just a thought to think about.
Yep. It was pretty thick up ahead, and
Right.
eventually I did get another arrow out. I had another arrow knocked. But he moved in a way that just I could see black
It
stuff
wasn't like
moving.
he was just in wide open woods
Yeah.
and you could have just shot an arrow.
Yep.
I understand that.
So when he kind of got where I couldn't tell where he was, it was getting too dark and everything, I tried to back out and then just get away. And I probably didn't get far enough away. So he probably kind of felt my presence a little bit. But because I thought I heard some scrambling around. Who knows? It could have been a deer.
You know, I want to stay on this point because I think this is something that people are going to encounter, have encountered, will encounter, and maybe some dialogue around it would be good. There's this, when you're retrieving an animal and when you see it after you've shot it, there's this momentary decision that has to be made. Do you move in real aggressively or do you back out real conservatively? And there's never an exact answer.
Mm-hmm.
And you did the right thing because you found the bear. So I'm not saying you did the wrong thing, but I'm saying there would be a time, and you just got to follow your instincts.
Yep.
I mean, you just have to follow what you think is the best thing to do without being rash, but there's been times when I've followed up on an animal where I got real aggressive, where I was just like, that sucker's not going anywhere. I'm not letting him getting up and walking off. I'm going to slip in.
I was really close at that point.
Right,
I was really close to doing that, just going in aggressively. Had he stayed where I could see him,
you probably would have done
pretty well. If he'd gone down right there, I probably would have. But as he kind of fell backwards and then went down the hill back into the little drainage, I pretty much lost sight of him.
Yeah.
And I was worried about two things: running him needlessly, or having him attack me mad, you know.
Well, and that is a legit consideration with a bear. And I am not suggesting that, anybody charge up on a wounded bear, but there could be a time when you would do that, and you made the right decision. So don't hear me telling you did something wrong.
Yeah, no. So, got out of there, hightailed it back to camp, celebrated with Rick. Like, that's probably the best part of the whole hunt.
Yeah.
I mean, I come tearing into camp, I honked the horn.
Man.
Rick was already back there.
I wish I would have been there, man.
And I jumped out of the truck, and Rick opens the camper door. And I'm like, Rick, I shot a bear. He's like, you did what? I said, I shot a bear.
Oh, man.
So, ate something real quick and made a plan, decided, look, I think this bear's mortally wounded. I think I know where it is. Let's go give him a look. Let's go look for him. So we went back in about 9:00 that night. We had to follow the whole trail because he wasn't where I thought he was, and ended up calling off the search at midnight. There were places where we were following felt like pinpricks of blood.
Yeah.
And eventually he got to a spot where he got up out of that drainage that's between your pinky and ring finger, started up onto the ring finger hillside, and we found blood, small amounts of it, all around a tree and a rock that had a big depression, looked like maybe a denning spot or something like that, and lost it. Just there was no more trail. And so we called it at midnight, went back to the camper.
How far was that from the initial place you shot the bear?
That was probably the trail itself was probably 100 and that was probably 100 yards. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say.
Just like, so the bear went 100 yards and you lost blood. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
Wow. See, I would have been really discouraged when I saw it starting to go uphill.
We were absolutely discouraged.
Yeah.
When he went down in, I was like, okay, he's going to go down
He's
there.
He's just going to be down in the creek.
And I walked up that thing, and I was like, man, he is not here. And I didn't find blood either. That was the other thing. So,
so it's the next morning.
So it's the next morning. We get up, first light. We're there at 7:00. We hike in. I go back. We both go back to where we lost the blood. Rick walks up that drainage between the pinky and the ring finger just to look and see. Maybe went up and then came back down. Nothing. Comes up on top of the next ridge, works his way down, and we get together and chat for a little bit. And it's like, man, Rick's got to go here pretty soon. I go back. I'm still trying to find the next blood. He goes down into the drainage between the ring finger and middle finger.
So over a hollow.
Completely over a hill, down into the next hollow. And that's where I found him. Just
random, he was just essentially just body searching.
Yeah. just looking for black fur. Wow. And he I forgot to say, on my way out, I thought I heard the death moans. He moaned 3 times.
Really?
Yeah. On my way out that night, I heard roar, roar.
But he moved from that spot?
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe he had already moved.
Okay, man. Okay, you just threw in a whole thing you didn't tell me.
Yeah.
You heard the death moan.
I think. I mean, I don't know.
James, you can't think you hear the death moan.
Well, I didn't see him die whenever I heard it, so how do I know? I mean, maybe he was just groaning and being mad about something.
No. Would it have been possible from where you heard it that it was where he died?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, see, this is valuable intel because the podcast that came out today, that
hadn't hit my phone before I got down here.
I know. It was delayed getting up for technical reasons. Me and Dad talk a ton about the death moan.
Yeah.
And about, well, you'll have to hear it. But if you hear anything after a shot like that, it means he's dead. I mean, when they death moan, they don't get up.
Well, that's what made me even more confident that we could go back in there that night and find him.
But he was in the other hollow.
He was, but
you were down low, so you could have.
Well, and so I didn't remember. By this point, it's dark. It's 7. It's about 7. Sun's down. I mean, I can see to get out without my headlamp, but barely. And I am not quite sure where I was on the trail when I heard that.
Okay.
But these 4 fingers that kind of run down together.
Kind of come together. So you just heard, boo.
Yep, and I didn't know. I thought he was still in that first drainage. Like, I wasn't that far away from it.
I see.
So I thought he was probably still there, and that's why I was really confident that we could go back and he'd be in that hole.
So how far from where you shot him to where you found him was the bear?
About 160 yards, straight line. But the way he traveled was probably more like 2 to 250.
Okay. Well, that's encouraging because, what you learned is that the bear had a 1 lung hit.
Mm-hmm.
So the bear only traveled, let's say, 300 yards, like if it was actually walking.
Yep.
Before it expired. There's a couple of things to factor into. I mean, it was a younger male that you took.
Yep.
So I have seen, like a 400-pounder is going to just have more. You got to do more to extinguish that life than you do a smaller animal.
Yep.
So I think that factored into it.
Mm-hmm.
That 1 lung on a smaller animal is going to be lesser because I've seen some bad hit big bears that just act like nothing ever happened to them.
Yep.
And that would have, yeah. So I think that's a factor. But it's really good intel that he died quickly with a 1 lung hit.
Right.
It's pretty good intel.
Yeah. So, he passed, I would say, because it was about 7 o'clock or thereabouts. I shot him right at 6:30, 6:35, something like that. And I backed out of there by 7, I'm pretty sure. And if those were the moans, that I heard, he died pretty quickly.
Yeah.
He was cold when we found him. That was the other thing.
But the next day,
yeah. So,
man, that is like I like the strategy that went into it, the work that went into it, and that you executed the plan. We communicated some that weekend I was hunting too, and you were like not finding much sign, and I was finding the same thing, or similar, not much sign. And then the next text I get from you, you go, "I shot a bear." It just didn't even make sense. Yeah. And let me. Well, first of all, I don't know the full story of the sheep hunt of the South. We started talking about this. I've been successful hunting this way, but there's a lot to be learned, and so I'm learning from your story.
Yeah.
Here's what I know is that this is a super tough year to kill a bear in national forest. That's been my observation.
It seems like it.
Just because the sign's not concentrated, game's not concentrated, acorns aren't concentrated. On years when things are really concentrated, it's much easier. So I think you pulled a needle out of the haystack for your third day hunting. As a matter of fact, I was a little bit upset. I was like, James, we're trying to build this up as this is a tough hunt, and then you go out and just kill one right away.
Do a couple podcasts and just go out and do it.
This is hurting my narrative of the sheep hunt of the South. I think you did something extraordinary. And I love it that it was intentional. You hear about guys getting lucky. There's always a guy that just gets lucky, which more power to him. Half the time I'm in the woods, I'm just hoping to get lucky.
Yeah.
The guy that just is like, man, I was just deer hunting and found some sign and killed it on the first day. But how intentional you were about it, that's what's cool.
Yeah.
Is that you set out to do this, you learned this, you learned a totally new area. You executed your plan. You brought in your friends. So much of this is so cool.
Yeah, it's been a great experience. I've learned so much about myself, about where I live, and the things that I feel like I didn't do as well as I wanted to just makes me that much hungrier, more hungry to go back.
Let's end the podcast talking about what you learned. What did you learn about this type of hunting?
Well, the first thing, of course, is you can't be validated by seeing game.
Rule number one, sheep hunt of the South.
Yep. You have to like the process.
Yep.
And I really did enjoy the process. Just being in the woods, letting that bubble shrink around me. Mm-hmm. Yes, I hiked 14, 15 miles. Golly, my pace was really slow. I was sneaking everywhere.
Yeah.
So just, you have to love the process. And that was fun. And I liked getting out and seeing how, I learned a lot about the terrain and how animals use the terrain. I never thought about this until probably on Monday. And I'm like, why in the world would an animal go from the creek bottom, which was at roughly 1,000 feet where I was, 1,100, something like that. Why would they run up and down the mountain a whole bunch? They wouldn't do that. They're wasting their energy. They might run across the face of the mountain.
Yeah.
So just got me thinking about different ways of hunting. I learned a ton about my gear. What can I carry? What's extra? What do I not need to carry? I realized when I looked at it on the map when I was all done, how little of the area that I intended to hunt, how little of it had I actually hunted.
Yeah.
So much more area to be explored. And the other thing that I learned was to trust what I was seeing. After seeing this suspicious spot, going back to it and seeing a bear there,
You're starting to put the pieces together.
Putting the pieces together. It's like, look, I mean, if you have some gut instincts about it, doesn't mean you're going to sit there today and see something today. But I think I saw a lot more relatively fresh sign than I gave myself credit for because I wasn't finding scat.
See, and that's, man, that is essentially the story of becoming a good hunter, is that you see sign, you interpret it, you understand what it's going to take to take an animal over that amount of sign. Mm-hmm. And it's always nuanced. Like in the best example would be like me talking about just my ultra hot spot bear hunt that I would describe as going into a white oak flat, finding 12 piles of fresh bear scat within sight, and beat out bear pads. And
that's what I was looking for. I never could find it.
And I mean, the reason that's so special is because that's so rare. But like, if you find that, man, you're going to kill a bear the first time, you're going to encounter a bear probably the first time you sit in there if you do some stuff right.
Yep.
There's also the caliber of sign, like the really nuanced sign like you're talking about, which I think you need more data points to really draw super strong conclusions.
Exactly.
And so I'm not discrediting what happened, because I think you'd sit on that kind of sign a lot and not see bears.
Exactly. Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Well,
learning.
What I was worried about is that there was no bears. Like, there's no bears. There's no bears. There's no bears. Well, there's bears. They just they're not quite as concentrated.
Well, and I think what I saw, because while you were doing this hunt, I as well was hunting in the mountains. Mm-hmm. And I hiked, I don't know how many miles, but I went through all my little traps, and found very little bear sign. I think when you see that concentrated sign, you're seeing multiple bears using the same area. Mm-hmm. I don't know the research of how many times a bear defecates during a day. But that would be interesting intel.
Yeah.
Because they are just calorie-eating machines. I would imagine it would be multiple times per day that they would defecate. So, if you see 10 piles of scat, you're like, well, how does a bear, take a dump once a day or 3 times a day? I think it's multiple times a day. It's when they're eating a lot. But, when the bears are spread out and maybe there's only one bear using that area, like you're talking about, like the chances of you finding his scat or seeing his actual print in the tiny little mud hole are less.
Yep.
So I think that's what you encountered.
Yeah.
Was maybe a place where, there was one bear, as opposed to this is a hot spot where there's multiple animals coming in here.
Yep.
Do you think that's right?
I think so. I mean, I'm pretty certain that where I was, there would be multiple bears in that area. And talking
at a given time.
And Rick was talking to some people, and I mean, there were several people over in that area who had, so and so killed a bear over on bait, a few days ago, or I've killed one in here before, blah blah blah, and so I know. Yeah,
I was
in a good spot. It was just getting those paths to cross.
Yeah.
What I would say the biggest thing that I learned was more of a personal lesson of how good it was to share that experience with a close friend.
Yeah.
I've known Rick for 25 years. I mean, since we were in college, and to have him be there to share that with, that's something I've never had before. It was something that I did want to get out of this experience. Darren and I had hunted before together several times, and we have had successful hunts, and that's been very enjoyable for sure. This was one of those things where I put in so much effort leading up to it that even if I hadn't killed a bear, it was a great experience. It was good time in the woods, just catching up. But then to have that success after both of us had hunted so hard we all kind of figured like if one of us even sees a bear,
That's a win.
that would be a win.
I'm still a little bit upset with Darren, but go on.
Well, the good news is it sounds like his dog's going to be okay. So I just, that's a lesson, I guess. I mean, I don't know that you need to learn that lesson, but that's one of my takeaways.
I think it is a lesson because you started out this quest by asking yourself, what do I want to get from hunting? Like, and part of that was something a little bit deeper from a human relationship standpoint. And that brings it back to something that I like to talk about, and I'm exploring for myself because much of my hunting is solo. Like, that's just been the way I've been successful. Now, my local hunting, like with the kids and stuff, is anything but solo. But a lot of my other stuff has been solo. Mm-hmm. That's kind of my default. That's my MO, is just like, I'm going to go do this. And I learned that when I was hunting with the guys in elk camp a few weeks ago, I actually learned kind of about myself and kind of compared myself to these other guys I was hunting with. Mm-hmm. And I realized I was a lot more like solo oriented than some of them, and it was a negative thing.
Yeah, in that case, you needed like buddies and stuff.
And if everybody had been like me, it wouldn't have been good. So, I kind of was like, okay, you can't be like this. You can't be like this all the time. And my dad would be the first one to tell you, he hunts pretty much by himself to this day. He's 72 years old. He goes and sets up a camp for a month and, pretty much hunts by himself. Mm-hmm. In some ways, that's cool. In other ways, there's probably...
Well, he's missing out. He could be missing out on some things.
He could be. And so I want to make sure... Well... Man, these stories mean nothing unless we have somebody to share them with.
Well, right.
And nobody can deny, like some big tough hunter be like, I do this for me. I do this for all these different reasons. You do it because you want to share a story with another human. I don't care who you are. That's what gives it value. Mm-hmm. If you didn't have, and even like this, if I killed a bear, I would have been excited to share it with you because I know you would be interested in it because you're doing. It's like your pursuit of this adds value to what I'm doing, and I know you wanted to share it with me. It's like my engagement with this style of hunting brought value to you.
Yep,
and so it wasn't. It was a wider experience, and man, that goes back. And people have heard me say it, and I'll probably keep pounding this drum because I think we miss it sometimes in the outdoor world, is that the hunting experience, though it is done in isolation, is actually a very communal thing. The very essence of hunting was to provide for family, friends, community. Mm-hmm. That's why we did it. That's why great hunters were revered inside of indigenous tribes. These guys were the keys to success of the larger whole. And obviously, we're not dependent upon this meat to survive at this stage. We may be after the elections in 3 weeks, but like provision, And I think the way that we draw that into relevance in today's world is what happened to you through this process of personal development, of you testing yourself, you planning, you strategizing, you drawing in other people that may not have been interested in this, is ultimately, I think you provided a template for your kids and for others to be able to set a goal and accomplish it. Yeah. And that's a powerful human thing. So anyway, I'm drawing this all into there was a lot more than a bear killed inside of this, but there was value drawn from it that can be used in other parts of life.
Right. Yeah. And the value in it and something that people who don't hunt sometimes don't understand is that holistic value of what you get from the hunting experience. And not to say that the animal that you take is secondary or inferior to the human experience that you get from it, but where we are today as a society, that animal is not required for me to survive, but it allows me to experience a richer human experience, connecting me directly to my food, connecting me to the brotherhood, the camaraderie of a successful hunt. Sharing that with others, sharing it with my family and my friends. There's such an intangible amount of benefit that has come out of this for me. Certainly would have had a lot of that stuff had I not killed a bear, but killing the bear then ties that all up. And like I said, there's so many things that I want to go back and do better next time. Man, I wish I had another tag in my pocket.
That's why you should go hunt Georgia.
I guess.
Not Arkansas.
Maybe I should.
Man, hey, really, in closing here, what are you going to do with this bear?
Okay.
You've already eaten some of it.
I've already eaten some of it. It's fantastic. It's all cut up.
Your
in
family
the freezer.
liked it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
They'd had some bear meat before.
They had a little bit of it,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, they liked it. The hide and the skull went. I was going to do the skull myself, and I was like, oh, man, I'm going to delegate that. So I took that to the taxidermist and took the hide. I'm just going to tan the hide.
Yep.
Nothing fancy with it.
You can make some bear chaps?
I don't think so.
You've seen my bear chaps, right?
I have. I don't have any animals to ride, and that's not a
high priority.
That's not a high priority
Okay.
in the Brandenburg household right now.
Understood.
But I will say that after hiking around a whole bunch, I could see where having a mule to ride over there would be real handy.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I mean everything.
So what have you cooked already with it?
We put a shoulder in. Just did a basic stew, potatoes and carrots and whatever.
Yeah.
A little bit of rosemary, a little bit of thyme, and
How'd
salt
you
and
cook
pepper.
the meat?
In the stew.
Now you brown the meat.
Brown the meat first.
Okay, so you chopped it up.
I left it on the shoulder.
Okay.
I left it on the shoulder and just put all of that in the pot together.
What do you mean? You left it on the bone?
I left it on the bone.
And you put this part of whole bear shoulder in a big pot.
Yep.
With all the stuff cooking around it.
Yep.
Okay.
And
then you cut it up afterwards?
Shredded it. Once it tendered up, we just shredded it with a fork and put it back in the stew. Took the bones out, shredded it up.
Okay.
And you get all that flavor.
Okay.
I mean,
it.
when it
See,
cooled,
I would have thought you would have trimmed all the meat off the bone, chopped it, and then put it in the stew.
Yeah, made it into stew meat first.
Okay.
We just did it, just put it in there just like that.
So you got all the bone, all the...
You get that broth out of the bone. You get...
Okay. How long did you cook it?
About 6 or 7 hours.
Okay.
It got super tender, though.
Wow, good.
We put that in the fridge, and then the next day I went out to get leftovers, and you get all the fat rose to the top.
Yep.
There's a healthy layer of it in there. And then I just mixed that all back up in there.
Heated it up, and
Man,
it's gone.
it's so good. That's
so good. They say that bear meat has a higher level of protein than deer meat. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. I've been feeling pretty strong this week. So
you're looking good, man.
Thank you.
No, I'm serious. Like you can look it up about the charts for wild game protein, and there's multiple charts, and some of them say totally different things.
It's hard to get a good read on it, probably.
But a guy that I trust, actually, he listens to our podcast. A guy named Mark Hall. He's got his own podcast from British Columbia. I'd read something that he wrote, and anyway, I trust his research on it.
Okay.
And the black bear meat has more protein than almost any other big game we hunt.
Wow.
Sure,
See, that just makes me want to go back out and get a bigger one next time.
Rocket fuel, man.
Yeah.
Man, I got it. Yep. I wanted to say something about Mark, the conservation. Talk for a minute, James.
Yeah. So, I skinned it all out myself. Just took the morning when I got back and I skinned out the skull. It wasn't terribly difficult. Watched a couple of videos and did that. Skinned out the paws down to the claws, and that probably the taxidermist told me that probably saved me a little bit of money because he didn't have to go do that.
So you skinned it all the way down. You skinned out the paws.
Yeah.
I was going to talk about that. That's one thing that in the bears, I've skinned 4 bears in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And every time with a new bear hunter. And a lot of times on the feet, I'd never slowed down enough to really script out exactly how to even just cut the paws off, like joint out.
Yeah.
And I really slowed down. And actually, there's going to be an article in Bear Hunting Magazine, a pictorial article,
Yeah.
not about the whole, just about how to get the feet off of the bone.
Yeah.
And like if you're going to do a mount or something.
Yeah, and there's different ways to skin the paw based on what you're going to do with it. So people kind of need to know what they want to do with it before they get started on that. That's something that I learned. And I just watched a couple videos, and then, I mean, my intention, because it was as a younger male, so it's not going to be a huge trophy or anything. I just wanted to tan the hide.
Yeah.
So I just cut straight down the pad and then just worked it out of there.
Worked it out, yeah.
Yep.
Mark Hall with the Hunter Conservationist podcast. It's a good podcast.
Okay.
He's a knowledgeable guy.
So
that's
yeah,
what you did.
I did all that. Didn't take me that long. You know, people might ask, how do we get it out of there? It was a smaller bear, so we just found a pole, and the two of us tied him by his wrists to the pole and carried him out that way.
Did you get any pictures of that?
It was just the two of us, man, and we weren't in selfie mode, so we just carried him out like that. And got him in the back of the truck. I took him back to camp then, and did all the rough cutting back at camp. And Rick had to take off, so he left me with all that work. But you know, he found the bear, so
well, he got a pass.
He does. He gets a pass.
Good job, Rick. So, all right. Well, that's awesome, man. Well, I'm really happy for you. Yeah, and I know this is probably just the start of your bear hunting world.
I think so. Man, one thing that I just want to say is, you know, it's hard, and, you know, for somebody who wants to do this, don't listen to other people that tell you, oh, it's not worth it. You might as well not even bother with it. If you have to be validated by killing an animal, this is not for you.
Yep.
But if you want the experience and you want to try to test yourself against it, go out and do it. I saw some Facebook comments here recently. Somebody else was asking about hunting bears in the national forest, and some people had said, hey, you don't even waste your time with it. And man, I just like, let's celebrate the success. Let's celebrate the effort. And I just feel like people need to know that it's hard, but it's fun. Like I had a really good time doing this. I don't think I'd have the same kind of fun just deer hunting, and partially because there's more deer out there.
Yeah.
Like if I hunted this hard and didn't see any deer, I'd be like, man, I must be just a terrible hunter. But there's hardly any bears out there, so to speak.
Yep.
Or there's fewer of them. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Just go out there and hang out and see what you see.
Yeah, it's a different style hunt, different pace hunt. It takes a different mentality.
Yep.
Well, awesome, man. Well, really appreciate it. Congratulations. And, let us know. Let me know how you keep using that bear meat.
I will.
Colby just did a ossobuco recipe that's going to be in the next issue of Bear Hunting Magazine.
I'll be looking forward to that. I've got 4 shanks in the freezer. Yeah.
It's incredible. I cooked it a month ago.
Yeah.
But he cooked it and photographed it just a few nights ago, and he was thrilled.
Now, was that with his bear from this year?
Yep. Cutting the shank, leaving the bone in. He did it in an Instapot.
Yeah.
So just like an hour long.
Yeah.
I'd done it in a crock pot when I left it for a long time. And he did an Instapot. He said it was super tender, super good. So
sweet.
All right. Well, hey, man, keep the wild places wild, because that's where the bears live.
Yep.